I forgot to take that down for my last stream. Hello, everybody. How we doing? Hope we're having a good evening. It is a very rainy, stormy evening here, so if you hear rain or thunder in the background, that is what you're going to hear. It is not by choice, I assure you. I'm also a bit tired. Work was long and difficult, but that's kind of what you'd expect from it, I suppose. Again, hope you guys are doing okay. Just a second. Alright, fix that problem. There we go. Okay, well, nothing like reading on a dark, stormy night, I suppose. Although I don't have... Well, I do have a horror story for you guys tonight, but it will come a bit later. So, today we are jumping into our series of stories. Tonight we're reading Helping Hands, The Tale of Tomiki, Monster Club, and Reanimated. So if you are new to this series, welcome. I hope you're doing well, and I hope that you have a good time here. Let's go ahead and see which story won the poll. Let's take a look. The Tale of Tomiki won. That is rare. The Tale of Tomiki usually drags at the bottom, but that's awesome. I knew Reanimated wouldn't get many because we're starting it tonight. Alright. So, let's get started. We'll be starting with Helping Hands tonight. For those who don't remember what this story is about, this is the story about a girl with polymelia going off to college for the first time. If you don't know what polymelia is, it is a condition where a baby is born with more limbs than they're supposed to have. Normally, it's an easy thing to fix. You just surgically amputate the limbs because they're nothing more than extra meat on the body. They don't have any functionality. But in her case, it's a little difficult because hers actually have functionality. And I've had a lot of art drawn of her over the years. Let's use this one. I like this one. Hold on. Why did you go away? Why'd you go away? Come back up. There we go. We'll go with this one. There we go. That's a good image of her. I like that image. Alright. Huh, brought up the image. It brought up a different image. I clicked that one first, but I meant to click this one. Alright. There we go. Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. We're on Helping Hands Chapter 3. As I walk to the red horizon, I yield but a single tear, one of joy and excitement, but also of matchless fear. I have waited all my life to finally be set free, like a bird trapped in its cage. To the sky is where I'll be. And now I leave this cage behind to fly away alive and free, but I hesitate to spread my wings for the loss of security. The car was bumping and bouncing wildly. It was difficult to focus and write what I wanted to get out. Mom and Dad were both whispering amongst each other in the front, and the air was feeling cold. I was wearing my large blue hoodie and blue jeans. My hoodie was unique, as Mom had knitted it to have 2 extra slots for my arms. I had one set under my notebook, acting as a hard surface for me to write on while I wrote a poem. Why poetry? Dad would ask, and the answer itself deserves its own poem, in my opinion. The truth was that poetry was my release. I never knew how to talk about half the issues and struggles I had, and so poems helped me express those feelings. And right now my mind was a flurry of emotions. We were finally doing it. I was finally going to college. I'd been dreaming of this possibility, of this day, ever since I begged my parents for this opportunity months ago. I was excited, and yet I was scared at the same time. My parents were scared too, but probably for different reasons than me. Yes, there was the obvious question of acceptance considering my polymelia, but there was so much more than that. I had never been to public school before, and I'd never had a roommate before. What would they be like? Would they be friendly? And would the professors be nice? They wouldn't ask me to write God is dead, would they? That'd be so cliche. But then again, I didn't have any reference for how teachers usually acted since I was homeschooled. I was certain the movie Mom and Dad watched with me was exaggerating how evil college professors were, but I couldn't know for sure. I was just nervous. I was trying to write my feelings into the poem, but the car ride seemed to increase and intensify my feelings of fear. "We're here," Dad spoke up. I looked out the window, and sure enough, we were. We were outside of the apartment complex owned by the university called University Place. Very original. It'd been Mom and Dad's idea to request my placement here because of its separation from the main campus, in case I wanted to escape for a while. I watched as students were unloaded and carrying stuff into their rooms. Well, we're on the second floor, apartment 23, room B, Dad said darkly. Well, best we should get started. I started to climb out of the car when Mom stopped me with her hand. Honey, please hide your arms, she whispered. But Mom, they're gonna see them eventually, I argued. Sweetie, No. Let her do it, Dad muttered. She's right. She can't hide them forever, even if she wanted to. Besides, if her peers are going to accept her, she needs to be open with them. Mom opened her mouth to argue, but Dad gave her a look that made her realize he was right. She sighed and got out of the car with me right behind her. I stretched my aching arms and legs, exhausted and tight from the car ride. Dad popped the trunk and grabbed some of the heavier items. Give me a hand, Jenna, Dad said. 1 or 4, I joked. Dad smiled. It was an old joke we used to play when I was younger. Well, 3 this time, since you'll need 1 hand for your key. Suddenly, Dad stood up and groaned. Ah, darn it. I forgot to run by the check-in office and grab your key. Oh, don't worry, Dad. I'll go get it, I laughed. Are you sure? Of course. I'll be right back. I took off running from the apartment to the University Place. Check-in station at the far end of the complex. As I got closer, I could feel eyes on me, and I felt naked. I began to understand why Mom and Dad were so nervous about me going to college and being in the open. I wasn't a freak. I wasn't a monster, but people stared at me because of my extra limbs. I subconsciously hugged my 2 arms around my middle in an attempt to make them look smaller. Just don't think about it. I walked to the door, and the glass door easily slid open with a light push. The young black woman behind the counter was on the phone with someone, so I merely approached the desk and waited. When she finally was done, she smiled and looked up. Good morning. How may I help you? Her eyes fell on my dual shoulders and followed them down to my extra arms. I blushed at her staring, and I pushed my glasses up my nose. Hello? My name is Jenna Corvus. I'm here to get my key and ID. The woman didn't answer right away, but only blinked. Are those real? She asked. I bit my lip a little. She hadn't heard a word I'd said. Yes, I answered, raising all 4 of my arms for her to see. As if staring at a rabid dog, she stood up out of her chair a little, her hands shaking. I was born with polymelia, I cried. Okay, I was born with them. Please would you stop staring at them? The woman quickly shook her head and tried to regain herself. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you. No, it's fine. But it wasn't fine. It wasn't fine at all. What Mom and Dad had warned me about had been completely true. My condition wasn't normal, and until the people here were used to me, I'd have to become accustomed to their stares and judgments. All of my fists were clenched as I tried to fight back the defeating tears. Can I please just get my keys now? Oh, sure. You're in... She turned to her computer, occasionally glancing up at me, clearly ashamed of herself. Apartment 23, room B, in the Low Country building, right? Yes, ma'am, I answered softly. She reached into her cabinet and pulled out a key, handing it to me. Here you are, and if you step through the door back there, they'll take your picture and give you your ID card. Thank you. And, ma'am, I'm really sorry forget about it. I'm used to it, I said, trying to smile and brush it off. But I wasn't used to it. I truly wasn't, and I didn't know if I could try to become used to it. I walked into the back room, and there was a large blue wall with a camera facing it. I watched a woman behind the camera. She smiled and looked at me, and then, like before, she stared. Young lady, those are cute, but we're taking a serious picture here. Please remove the prank arms, she said. They aren't pranks. They're my arms, I growled, holding out both of the arms on one side to shake her hand. Jenna Corvus, nice to meet you. She squeaked at the movement of my dual set of arms and stared bug-eyed. Oh my, I'm so... Please, let's just move on, I snapped, standing in front of the camera. The woman politely nodded and ordered me to stand still and smile. I closed my eyes, trying to smile. But my thoughts were heavy and my sadness deepening. I breathed in deeply and tried to focus on better things. My poems, maybe? No, those wouldn't cut it in this case. They, too, were riddled with depression and anxiety. Maybe this was all a mistake. Would it be too late to ask for a refund, to leave and go back home? And then I thought about someone else I'd spoken to. Oh, shut up. If anything, you're going to be the coolest student there. They're going to line up in droves just to get to know you. My cousin's voice leapt to the forefront of my memory like the sound of a cannon. Sam had his way of calming me. He'd been my best friend for a long time, and just like before, his words were egging me forward, encouraging me. Jenna, you know you want to go to college. It's time to face your fears and do it. You got me and your parents backing you up, and they may not say it, but they're really happy that you're ready to step out on your own. I whispered a thank you to Sam, and then looked at the camera and gave it the biggest and brightest smile I possibly could. The thought of Sam, my parents, and the thought of receiving my lifelong dream of being a writer, poet, and possibly teacher could finally be achieved. I relaxed my arms beside me, and I felt the frustration and anger leave me as the camera snapped twice. Okay, that should do it, the woman said. If you wait just a moment, your card will be finished. This is your university ID for almost everything. When you go to eat on campus or into the gym in the library, this is the card that you use to get in. It will also be what we use to identify you in classes, as the picture that you have just taken will be your profile image for teachers to know who you are while calling the roll. As I listened, the machine hummed and growled like a small dog. After a few moments, it finally spat out my card. I lifted it up so my face could be seen, and I wanted to get a better look. It was small, blue, the same size as my driver's license. It had the CCU logo on it and my own picture to the right side. It had my name along the bottom, and I grinned at the big smile I had. I looked like a dork with my glasses, but my father always assured me that I looked cute in them. This was just one more reason to smile, I suppose. I hope you have a good day, Jenna, the woman said. I do want to apologize for my behavior earlier. It was certainly wrong of me. It's okay, really, I assured her. And this time, I meant it. I was actually very excited to get my stuff moved in. I slipped my new ID into my wallet and gripped my new key firmly, rushing out the door. I didn't bother to look back at the young black lady at the front desk, as I didn't need to see her staring at my arms again. I jogged back to the car where Mom and Dad were both waiting. I showed them the key and they smiled, but then frowned once more, looking rather concerned. Did you get any looks, honey? Dad asked. Yeah, but I think I can handle it. My arms aren't going to hold me back. If anything, I'm going to need the extra set of hands. Well, I'm glad to hear that, but I wasn't talking about your arms. Huh? If anyone's going to be staring at you for anything, he said, it's going to be because of how cute you looked. I blushed and shoved Dad. Oh, stop it, I laughed. But all the same, I wrapped my arms around both him and Mom. They hugged me back and Dad kissed my hair. I'm proud of you, sweetie. Scared to death, but I'm proud of you. Well, let's hurry and get you unpacked, Mom offered through tears-filled eyes. I nodded my agreement and helped drag all of my stuff inside. It wasn't a lot. After all, I'd get the weekend to go home and get anything else I needed. I used my free hand to push the key in and open the door to my new apartment and new life. I saw that we were already coming cases and some luggage laying around, so my roommate was already moving in, but I didn't see her anywhere. Guess I'll meet my roommate later? I asked. Probably, but we won't worry about that right now. Let's just get you moved in, okay? We walked through the living room until we were found in the door marked B. I slid my key once more into the lock and walked in to see my large room. It was a room all to myself, with a twin-size bed, a desk, dresser, a walk-in closet, and my own bathroom with a shower. It was perfect, and it was just what I wanted, and what I needed to begin my college career, like I'd always dreamed of. Thanks for believing in me, I giggled as I dropped my book back on the bed. I know that you guys were afraid, but this is just so awesome. I'm so excited for the semester and for having such a nice room. I turned to Mom and Dad and beamed at them, that same smile I gave when my picture was taken. I feel like this is going to be a wonderful semester. And you know that we're always here to lend you a helping hand, Dad assured me. All right, and that was chapter 3. And now we'll jump into chapter 4. All right, we'll jump into the next chapter right now. Lord, I thank you for this day, for the chance to make my way. Please show me your love and watch from above. 'Tis your blessings that I pray. Amen. It was the very first poem I ever wrote. I was just a little kid back then. My parents had always had me read the Bible and learn about God. My favorite book of the Bible was Psalms. It appealed to the writer in me to read the different songs and poems. It was what inspired me to write my first prayer, and sure enough, I wrote it at the age of 7. My parents even had me pray it over supper for many of the nights. Here I sat in my room silently praying that prayer once again. The room was lovely. My parents had helped me unpack everything, and now it looked very much like a place worth staying in. I had a wooden dresser by the door with a bookshelf right next to it. I had a small TV on top of the bookshelf that was plugged into a DVD player. Both of these items took up the whole of the wall, and on the wall next to that one was a walk-in closet with all my coats and jeans. I had a clothes hamper inside as well, and my luggage was kept in there as well. On the farther side of the wall was my bathroom with a toilet, shower, and long counter with a sink. In between these two doors, positioned up against the wall, was a desk with my papers, books, and utensils all laid out for me. I had a few posters up on the wall as well as a calendar. It wasn't much to look at, though. My bed was a queen-size bed that was elevated up off the ground and pressed into the corner of the other side of the room. The large window that showed the outside of my building was right next to my bed, and the setting sun was glowing through it. This was my room, and I couldn't have been more happy with it. That said, I slowly became increasingly aware of the absence of my mom and dad. After that, they'd said their tearful goodbyes, it slowly sank in just how alone I was. I wouldn't have mom to talk to anymore, or dad to run to when I was upset. I was on my own now. I was finally going to do things for myself. I was both happy and terrified, all in the same flurry of emotions. My roommate had yet to show up, and I was wondering if I'd see her tonight or if I'd have to wait for tomorrow. Maybe some music will help, I thought. I reached for my iPod and plugged my earphones in, while I used my other two hands to adjust my pillow so I could lay back on the bed without hurting my back. I smiled as one of the first songs to come up was Sincera by Josh Groban. My mom, though, thought it was silly that I love foreign-sounding music, but Dad thought it was perfectly unique and interesting, just like me. I felt a tear build up in my eyes as I thought of Dad saying that. I miss him already. I was interrupted from the song by the ringing of my phone. Just as I was getting into the song, too, I picked it up to look at the caller ID, and I grinned at the number and held it to my ear. Resting two arms behind my head to relax, my other arm relaxed on my tummy, and my phone hand was propped against my ear. "Hey, Sammy," I go. "Is this my favorite cousin?" "I think so." "Oh, Sam, can you believe it? I did it. I'm in college," I cried. "Are you kidding? Of course I knew you could do it. All you had to do is just move in. Well, you're on your way. I just got moved in, too," Sam answered. I giggled inside. "Hey, I'm proud of you." "Oh, thanks, Sam. I'm proud of you, too. Hey, if you're not too busy, want to meet up this weekend somewhere and talk about our first week?" I asked. "I'll be out with my girlfriend on Saturday, but I'm free Sunday. How's that sound?" Sam asked. "Sounds great. How is Liz?" Liz was Sam's girlfriend of 4 months. She's one of the few people outside of the family who knew me and my condition. It took her some time to get used to me, but now we're pretty decent friends. I hadn't talked to her for some time, but I trusted her with my cousin. "Oh, she's fine. I told her you were moving in today, and she wanted to wish you good luck, too." "Tell her I said thanks. So what are you... Oh, sorry, cuz. My roommate's here, and I'm going to go eat with them. Hey, tell you what. I'll chat later, okay? Hey, chin up. Speak to you tomorrow, maybe? Bye." I was sad to hear him hang up so quickly, but I knew he cared about me, and I knew that he was backing me up. I could call him any time I really needed to, of course. I went back to relaxing. I reached with my two arms and plugged my phone on the charger, debating if I should just nap for a while. It didn't seem like a bad idea. I closed my eyes when, out of nowhere, I heard the sound of a door opening in the living room of my apartment. I climbed out of bed and ran, two heads through my hair while the other two adjusted my shirt and pants. I had to look my best, after all. I noticed that Sincere by Josh Groban was still playing on my iPod, and I quickly paused it, blushing. I hope that my roommate likes Josh Groban music like I do. "Hello?" I heard her voice shout. "Anyone else here yet?" I hurried out of the room to see her. She was slightly taller than me. She had auburn hair and she had deep green eyes. She had on a windbreaker suit and pants, and she was lugging a large suitcase, pillows, and a box of stuff. She saw me come out of my room and sighed with relief. "Oh, thank goodness. Someone else is here. I'd introduce myself better, but my hands are full. Grab something for me?" I nodded quickly. Sure." I ran forward. She didn't seem to notice my arms, and if she did, she said nothing. I grabbed her box and grunted as the weight pulled against me. I lifted the box up and helped her to her room. She unlocked her door and walked inside her bare room. I flicked on the light with one of my free hands and set the box down on the bed with a loud grunt. My roommate dropped her stuff, too. "Damn, that was a trip," she groaned. She then turned to me and held out her hand. "My name's Logan Hawkwood." I held out my own right hand and shook hers. "Jenna Corvus, it's nice to meet you," I said. It was in that moment that Logan finally took a long look at me and noticed them. She stared from me to my hands for a moment, and her eyes widened. I was really starting to resent that response. Are those your... Yes, I snapped. I was born with them. I have 4 arms, okay? This was starting to become hard to stomach. Would I have to go through this with everyone I met now? Oh, wow! I mean, that's so cool! Cool? What? I asked. I ain't never met a person with 4 arms before. That's pretty awesome, Logan sighed. You really think so? I asked, flushing a little, hugging myself. Of course! That's really neat, Logan giggled. I'd bet you could arm wrestle 4 different people at once. We both laughed. The truth was that my dad had always wanted me to train in boxing or something just to see how well coordinated my arms were. And I tried it out. I'm pleased to admit that I'm unbelievably well coordinated. It's not like I'm some kind of freak. So what brings you to CCU, Jenna? Logan asked, sitting on her bed. Just wanted to get away from home, I admitted. This is the first time I've ever really been out of my own. I mean, I'm kind of nervous. Well, I'm in a bit of a loner all my life, Logan chimed in. She then looked at my arms and giggled. I have a feeling you'll be getting to know a lot more people real soon. So don't worry, it won't be as lonely as you think. I don't know, I said. Everyone's been looking at me funny and treating me like some kind of weirdo, Logan shrugged. Yeah, you are weird, Logan said. But in my opinion, weird is just another way of saying interesting. Trust me, once people get past the arms thing, they won't see you as weird anymore. I should know. People think I'm weird too. How are you weird? I asked. Logan smirked and pulled her box close to her and opened it up. She reached inside and pulled out a book. It was a small paperback book. The front revealed to me exactly what it was, and I had only seen pictures of these online. Is that a manga? I asked. It's pronounced manga, Logan responded. Yes, that's a manga. I'm a fan of manga and anime. Unfortunately, to a lot of people, I'm weird because of that. I reached over and took the book, looking at the characters on the front. They were definitely those anime characters in Japanese cartoon base that I'd seen. They were odd, but strangely nice, too. There was a quality to them that I couldn't help but appreciate. Well, I don't think it's that weird. I mean, it's kind of cool. I giggled, flipping through the pages. You do? Logan cried. That's awesome. Oh, you have no idea how many people make fun of me for it. It's always animes for overweight people who have no social life, and only nerds like anime. That's not right. Why would people act that way just because of someone's interest? I asked. Jenna, you really have been sheltered all your life, haven't you? Logan asked, shaking her head. This world, pretty effed up. If you aren't cool or your interests don't meet society's expectations and standards, you're destined for a life of solitude. Not necessarily, I grinned. I mean, we're friends, right? So we're not totally isolated. Logan looked at me with a surprised expression, then grinned. Huh. Guess you have a point there, she giggled. Thanks, Jenna. So, I told you one of my interests. What's yours? She asked. I like poems and books. What's your favorite kind? She asked. I thought about it for a moment and then shrugged. We both laughed and talked for a good 30 minutes about books, manga, art. Logan was the first friend I'd made on campus. Sammy had been right. I'd make friends sooner than I thought. Well, I don't know about you, but I'm getting hungry. Want to go to the cafe with me? Logan asked. It's called Hicks, right? Sure, I'd love to. Logan elbowed me playfully. Who knows? We might run into some hot guys there, huh? Logan teased. I blushed furiously. Will we? I've never really gotten to talk to a lot of nice guys before. What if the... Settle down, girl. I was kidding, Logan laughed. I'll bet if a guy asked you out, you might just melt right there. Actually, I probably would, I admitted. The prospect of meeting cute guys had crossed my mind before coming to college, but I'd not actually considered how I'd respond to one talking to me. I felt myself turning red again and shook my head. Let me get my coat. I ran back to my room and grabbed my four-arm coat, specifically tailored by my mom for my body. I slid all my arms through the sleeves and hurried after Logan, who was waiting by the door. Ready to go? I'm starving already, Logan asked. Yeah, I'm ready. I followed Logan out as I closed the door behind us. I felt a bit more secure sitting beside my friend. The eyes that stared at me didn't seem as apparent as they had before. And that is chapter 4. And yes, for those of you wondering, some of you are probably thinking, why is liking anime or manga uncool? Like, lots of people like it. I wrote this story back in 2015. Yeah, this was back in 2015 when manga and anime was considered uncool. So, that's why. Alright, well, take down the picture. And I'll put up the next one. Let me see. Gotta find a good one. Yeah, we'll just use this one. I've liked this one. All right, The Tale of Tomoki. All right, this is really good. Also got Sean Wing on my first banner. Cool, great job. All right, I need to go grab a drink. I'll be right back. All right, I'm back. I had to get a bottle. Out of all the stories you've written, which is your favorite? I don't have a favorite. I love all my stories. There are some that have been more fun to write than others, but it's hard for me to pick a favorite because all of them are my babies to a certain extent. All right. Was it the same for you, Raven? Like nervous about college? True story. Jenna's story was written by me while I was in college, believe it or not. I wrote her experience based a lot on my own experience. See, here's the thing. I had one person try to guess, hey, Raven, did you write Jenna to be a allegory for like a mentally handicapped or physically disabled or LGBTQ person? And I said, kind of, sort of, but not really. What she's really meant to represent is how I felt. When I started college, I felt weird. I felt like I was the odd person, the oddball. I thought that everyone was staring at me, thinking I was a weirdo, thinking that I was out of the ordinary. And so I felt like that I had extra arms growing out of me or something, the way people looked at me sometimes. So I wrote Jenna in a sense that she represented me. She loves poetry and stories and books. She likes literature. She wanted to be a teacher. But she felt different. She felt like no one really understood her. She felt like she just really didn't fit in. But I wanted to give her a more outrageous issue, like Four Arms, which would be a little bit easier to understand. And several of her friends that she meets throughout the story will have their own handicaps and issues and struggles. Some very bombastic, some very simple. Like, let's face it, you know, Logan's issue is that she's an otaku. She likes anime and manga. Not a big deal in the grand scheme of things, but still, it's something that many people think is weird. And back then, back in 2015, it was weird to a lot of people. So Logan would have been made fun of for that by a lot of people. So I wanted to create a story where I showed how certain individuals felt and reacted to all that. So I thought that that would be a good idea. Okay. Let's go ahead and get started with Tale of Tomoki. Moving on to the next two chapters, guys. We're on chapter 30. If you don't remember what happened last time, the poachers have attacked Tomoki in the middle of the school dance. And Tomoki has to hold them off while helping everyone escape. This won't be easy. And you're about to hear a very, very heavy part of Tomoki's story. Here we go. Written August 6, 2016. I jumped his punch instantly and landed a solid kick into the side of Vokon's head, sending him flying across the dining hall and into the wall. I didn't stop there. I threw my shirt off as it restricted my movements and launched myself after him, building up ki to my fist as I struck him hard. "You like that?" I snapped. "Is that all you can do, Saiyan?" I felt pain burst through my chest as his head crashed into me like a cannonball, firing me across the room like a bullet and smashing me into 3 tables and finally leaving a crater in the brick wall. Blood spurted from my mouth. Oh, what? Hold on. Sorry, I read something funny. I'm sorry about that. Blood burst from my mouth like a busted balloon, and I swore I felt my right arm break from the impact, but I tried to shake it off. His headbutt. It was nothing short of a wrecking ball. Vokon stepped out, brushing the blood from his own lip. "Weak. Absolutely pathetic." Now I know you didn't defeat Joga alone, Vokan sneered. I got up and ran at him again, holding back just enough power not to hurt the innocent students who hadn't gotten away yet, but with enough to hit like a small explosion. Reject! His fist caught my gut before I could touch him, though, and I felt him grip my injured arm and fling me across the room again. I tried to recover, but he was on top of me in a microsecond. I threw up my defenses and prepared for his counterattack. Each punch that came close I deflected, but their weight was incredible. Blocking them was a challenge, but that was only half the problem. The real problem was I couldn't use my full power, and from the look on Vokan's face, I think he was figuring that out. He threw in a solid knee to my face, and I threw up my arms to block, using my ki like a buffer to slow and muffle the force. But it was a moot point. You're holding back your full power, Vokan hissed. Why? I didn't answer him. I just stood ready, glancing back at the students still filing out of the room as fast as they could. Vokan saw my glaze and distraction and looked. Them? Leave them out of this, I shouted. I told you, if you want me, you can have me, but they aren't involved. You're right, Vokan admitted. They aren't involved. I'll remove them from the equation. He raised his hand as purple energy began building up in his hand. No! I leapt at him and struck with full force, an explosion of ki accompanying the blast. He grunted in pain and leapt away, coughing and rubbing his jaw. Now that was better. Looks like I finally got through to you. I'm warning you, I shouted. Leave them out of it! I'll give you a fight. Just don't touch them. If you care so much about them, protect them! He leapt away from me and towards the students as screams erupted. I threw myself in his path and slammed both hands into his chest. Reject! This time I connected, and with a blast like a shotgun, Vokan was thrown away from me. My hands were trembling from the impact, and I quickly tried to recover my energy. I was expending everything to keep them safe. If Vokan kept doing this, someone would get hurt. But I couldn't use my full power to fight him. Doing so would put them at risk too. All I could do was hold him off until everyone got out. Not too many to go. Only about 30 students left in the building. Just a bit longer. Not bad, Saiyan. Not bad at all, Vokan laughed, climbing to his feet and holding out both hands as purple energy began to gather in his palms. Now I'm done playing this game. It's time to end this. The purple energy flared up brightly, and I knew it was coming. The light grew until it seemed to fill the whole room. There was no way I could block the whole thing. I had to deflect the area headed towards the students. I roared in anger and my ki flared. I released it in a focused wave and our two energies met, clashing with a loud explosion of force. It was incredible, and I had to keep pouring out energy to hold it off. Any more energy, and I would lose control. Ah! I thrust my hands forward and finally dissipated the expending ki into mist. But half the dining hall was obliterated behind me. I fell to one knee and panted heavily. This was the hardest battle I'd had in ages. It wasn't because Vokan was necessarily too strong, but that I was fighting with an arm tied behind my back. I couldn't go all out. I glanced behind me, glad to see none of the students seem hurt as the last of them was evacuating. I smiled, when suddenly I heard a scream. A terrible and familiar scream. No! I spun around and saw Victoria coming down from above with I saw Vokan coming down with a deadly ki attack, but it wasn't aiming for me. Victoria! Why had she come back? Why was she inside? Why hadn't she just stayed out with the others? For me? Did she come in to get me? I couldn't stop to ask these questions. All I could do was run for her. Get away from her! I sprinted forward and slammed my full body into Vokan and released an explosion of ki to clash with his, knocking us both into the opposite wall. Victoria! I jumped to my feet and saw her, lying on the ground, her red dress and silvery hair covered in blood, and rubble from the wall lay around her. The ki explosion. I'd forgotten to suppress my ki. In the heat of the moment, I'd forgotten to hold back, and she received the full blunt of that attack. I screamed in terror, rushing to her side and lifting her into my arms. Her body lay limp and her face had a few cuts on it. I placed my ear to her chest, listening, begging. It was faint, so faint I could scarcely make it out, but I could sense a beat in her chest. She was just alive. Stay with me! You stay with me! I aimed my hand to the ceiling and destroyed it with a ki blast. When the hole appeared, I shot through it, flying at top speed for the hospital. Where do you think you're going? Vokan shouted. I shot a venomous look back at him. I'll be back for you! I roared before focusing all my energy on getting away. I'd never run from a fight before, but I had no choice. This was my first and only priority. I didn't care about the school, about Vokan, about the poachers, about anyone. Victoria needed help. Her body was so light I barely felt it, but the pain in my soul was sapping my strength fast. I'd forgotten to hold back. I'd been so afraid for her that I'd let all my energy out at once. She'd been caught in that explosion. Don't leave me. Please, Victoria. I landed outside of the front of the hospital and ran inside. The staff took one look at me and Victoria and rushed into action, but it meant nothing to me. I was crying and holding her out to them. Help her! I shouted. Save her, please! I screamed at them. They ran out with a stretcher and helped her onto it. I followed after them, but two of the nurses held me back. You can't go in there. You have to stay here. No, let me through. I have to be with her. I'm sorry. She needs medical attention, and you'll just be in the way. You need to wait out here, sir. I struggled a moment, but finally gave in. You save her, damn it! Don't let her die! They ran back to tend to her, and when they were gone, I finally whispered what I was thinking. I can't lose her, too. It was my fault, just like with Belle. My fault that she was there. My fault that Vokan attacked. My fault that she was in the line of fire. It was all me. I fell against the wall, crying into my hands. Tomaki! I looked up. Time seemed to have slowed down for me. I didn't know how long I'd been in the hospital. It must have been a while. Suddenly, Victoria's father was running inside, his face white and sweat on. What happened? Victoria called me, saying one of the aliens was attacking the school. Sir, I didn't. Then she said she was going back to find you. What happened to her? Tell me! He shouted, grabbing my shoulders. She was taken back into surgery. I got her here as quick as I could, Mr. Rhodes. I'm so sorry. It was all my fault. It's my fault that she... No, son. No, it wasn't, Mr. Rhodes shakily whispered. No, if anything, you probably saved her. Thank you, boy. Thank you, Tomaki. Oh, God. He walked away and fell into a chair, rubbing his brow helplessly. Despite his words, I couldn't shake the feeling of fear in my heart. What happened to Vokan? I asked. We arrived on the scene and he was gone. He must have lost interest in the school when you left. There were few injuries and no death that we could see, thanks to you. We're still assessing the situation, Mr. Rhodes replied. It was small comfort. Hours passed in what felt like days. I only sat in silence, hoping, crying, praying for her. But slowly the fear grew to depression and despair. Why was it taking so long to hear back? What if I just held back? Finally, a familiar face walked in. I glanced up to see a heavily armored individual walk by. Despite the helmet, I knew who it was. Everyone in the lobby of the hospital stared at the Gaiken soldier walking in, but I knew Hosha when I saw him. Tomaki, he asked. I heard about Vokan's attack. Are you safe? I am, but not Victoria, I growled. I wanted to inform you, despite how bad this seems, there is a sliver of good news. Thanks to Vokan's attack, we got a fix on his location. When he attacked the school, I honed in on his energy and tried to intercept him, but he was already gone by the time I got there. But he managed to get away to his hideout. We believe he's hiding out in some warehouse a few dozen miles from here. It's near the Bay sector, if I'm correct. I listened to him speak about Vokan, but it seemed somewhat muffled. The sadness in my heart was changing shape, like a log being caught on fire. Rage. Hatred. Fury. These emotions began to swell in my being, and my fists were clenching. Vokan. I hated him. I loathed that despicable monster. He dragged Victoria into this. It was his fault. His fault! I was about to stand, when finally the doctor stepped out of the doorway. I spun to see him, and Mr. Rhodes was already hurrying to him. Doctor, how is she? Is she all right? We've stabilized her, but she's not out of the woods, the doctor explained. She's unconscious right now. She suffered a severe head and spine trauma, and we're monitoring for further lasting injury. She has a concussion, and we believe she might have suffered at least temporary vision loss due to the damage to her ocular nerve. The damage to her spine is what we're truly worried about, though. As it was low, we don't anticipate long-lasting damage. But, sir, you need to be prepared for the possibility of paralysis from the waist down. We may have to be prepared for that reality. Oh my God. Every word the doctor said filled my heart with agony, and I could feel tears rolling down my face. What had I done to her? What would happen to my Victoria? We're about to prep her for surgery. If you want to come back and see her real quickly. Yes, please. The doctor took Rhodes by the arm and led him through. I followed close behind. When the doctor turned as if to stop me, Rhodes just waved me in. Hosha waited for me in the lobby, giving up a light bow. Go see her. We'll talk afterwards. I stared at her, unable to believe what I was seeing. That same beautiful face, now bloody and laying on a pillow with rods and bandages around her head. Her beautiful gown was gone and replaced with a wretchedly white hospital gown. Her neck was tied in a brace and her eyes were bandaged so I couldn't even see those beautiful red eyes of hers. She looked like a vision of death, and for a brief second I feared the worst. Her breasts were short and labored, and I clutched my chest in disbelief. Rhodes ran to her and knelt beside her, kissing her cheek and crying next to her unmoving and unconscious body. I wanted to do the same, but I stopped myself. It was me. It was me that put her there. I didn't have the right to go to her side. No, it wasn't me. It was Vokan. The rage flared into me once more, and all I could see was his smug, ugly face. That disgusting sneer as he charged at Victoria. He'd done this, and he would suffer for it. Take care of her, sir. I'll be back. I marched out of the hallway and back towards the lobby. When I walked out, I glanced at Hosha, who was merely staring at me a moment before he gulped. He felt uneasy by me. Good, because I wanted Vokan to feel the same way. Where is he? I snarled. We located him at a warehouse outside of Bay Sector. Like I said, I'm getting some reinforcements. Once they get here by morning, Where are you going? I was already walking past him towards the exit. I'm going to find him, I hissed. You can't seriously expect to fight him alone. You barely held him off before. Don't stop me, I snapped back. Vokan crossed the line. He crossed it because he wanted to fight me at my best. He wanted me angry. Well, he got it. I'm going to give him exactly what he wants. Tomaki, I can't let you go. Tomaki! I wasn't listening anymore. I'd already taken off and started flying for Bay, sensing the energy of Vokan as best I could. I would find him. I'd find him and make him pay for what he'd done. Vokan, you son of a bitch! I roared, the image of Victoria's weak and unconscious face fresh in my memory. I'll kill you for what you've done! And that was chapter 30. Let's get to chapter 31, shall we? August 7th, 2016. I woke up on the floor of Master Hayato's dojo. I blinked and tried to move, but the sudden pain that jolted through my body knocked me down instead. I resisted the urge to scream as intense, ripping pain tore through my whole body, especially my right arm. I glanced at it to see it was completely bandaged. Even my chest and shoulders were bandaged up like I was some kind of mummy. I looked around hoping to see someone, and then I saw Hayato standing nearby. Master Hayato was just staring at me with concern on his face, as well as frustration. Master? I asked. Do you remember what just happened, Tomaki? He asked. I thought back. It had been 2 years since I'd left home to train with Hayato, and we had begun training in more advanced techniques now. And he'd gotten me to try something new, a new way to use my ki in a more powerful way. I remember we were practicing a new technique, I muttered, and then I used it on that really big rock on the hill. But then after that, it's all just pain and snapping noises, and a roar like a big lion. Hayato pulled back the curtain to the window and pointed out to the hill where we'd been training. Do you see what that technique did? I looked, and there was nothing there. The hill was a pile of rubble. Trees were destroyed and scattered like twigs in a maelstrom. I couldn't believe my eyes. I'd caused that? What on earth? I did that? Hayato pulled back his sleeve to reveal cuts and bruises along his own arm. Tomaki, I was standing only 30 meters away from you, and the shockwave you caused nearly killed me. That attack, it's far too dangerous. I couldn't stop staring at the remains of the hill. This technique, I muttered. I didn't think it could do that much damage.
Neither did I. Otherwise, I wouldn't have recommended you even attempt it, Hayato admitted. This attack is by far your trump card. It has the potential to deal tremendous destructive damage in a single blow. But Tomoki, I forbid you to ever use it unless in a very desperate situation.
Why? I questioned, though I already had a guess.
For one thing, that damage, brought to bear against a normal enemy, would be more than enough to kill them. Secondly, the collateral damage it causes is catastrophic. Innocent bystanders could be caught up in that shockwave you create. Finally, your own arm, Tomoki. That attack is a double-edged sword. You yourself are exposed to the shockwave of the attack. It could easily kill you too. Unless your life or the lives of others are in danger, you must never use this attack. I forbid it.
I understand, Master. I'll never use the Jishin again. I sighed, rubbing my injured arm.
Good. Good, get some rest. I'll make supper soon. We need to get you healed up if we're going to continue training. But forget about the Jishin. I will never allow you to use that technique again.
Hayato walked away, leaving me to sit on the floor of the dojo, looking at the destruction I'd caused, and understanding just what kind of power I was capable of. It was terrifying. The warehouse was just south of Bay, and when I felt the energy of Vokon within it, I felt my blood boil. I clenched my fists and marched towards the warehouse door, kicking it open with full force. There were 3 energy signatures inside, and when I marched in, I saw who they were. 2 of the aliens from before that served under Vokon, the girl and the short, ugly one, and in the back, resting on an old recliner, was Vokon. He smirked when he saw me, and that ugly smile only made me even angrier.
You came back. You got rather worked up over that girl.
Vokon chuckled.
Laugh while you can, I hissed, running towards him.
Nix, Vokon called. The girl alien leapt up and held out her hands. In the center of her palms were a pair of strange holes, which suddenly shot sticky golden fluid that fell over me, hardening on impact. I grunted and tried to throw them off me, but it stuck like spider webbing. What? I roared.
Nyx is a Spinavi. She's capable of creating a sticky substance from her body, which her race has used since its prehistoric upbringings to snare prey. The material has the ability to consume energy, and Nyx can then absorb it and add it to her own stores. Vokon explained. Said the spider to the fly. You've stepped into our trap, boy. It was then I understood. Vokon had planned this. He wanted me angry so I'd seek him out. This was all part of the hunt for him. And since there are to be introductions, Zekal is from a race called the Bushinjon. They are capable of creating 5 body replicas of themselves in one. Zekal, demonstrate. Zekal smirked and threw off his clothing, revealing 4 large bulges on his back. With a roar of power, the 4 bulges burst from his body and began to take form of exact copies of Zekal, all laughing and smiling, revealing their razor-sharp teeth. I struggled to escape the sticky substance Nyx had me trapped in, but I was unable to move. It was hard as steel. The clones of Zekal all surrounded me and began firing rapid-fire ki blasts. Each hit me and stung like fire. But the pain only added to my rage. Hatred, fury, my anger, flaring into an aura. A deep power that had all but set aside. I had felt it when Bell had been killed. Felt it when Mamaragon had killed Komodo. And now, again, that incredible power was surging inside me. The 5 Zekals all fired at once, creating a large explosion, swallowing me in smoke and fire. I grunted and leaned over, buckling under the pressure and suffocation of the smoke. Don't be afraid to get down and dirty, Zekal, Vokon called. This Saiyan isn't worth much at all. He's a housebroken pet to these humans. No bite to match his Saiyan bark. But I can't help but wonder, what good is that protective idealism if it allows those close to you to die, like that girl? Her face flashed before my eyes again, that lifeless and pain-filled beautiful face. The rage exploded with the force of a bombshell and roared to life like a hurricane. I roared to the heavens, the golden power within exploding outwards, throwing the smoke away and dissipating it. Nyx screamed in agony as her sticky material was burned to cinders, and she herself was thrown backwards by the impact. Zekal and his clones all jumped away in terror at the raw energy rushing off of me. Vokan jumped back too, staring, his two eyes widening like dinner plates. What is this? You'll pay for what you did to her! You'll pay in blood! Nix, restrain him, Vokan shouted. She nodded and fired a heavy load of her sticky steel material. Useless. I snatched the already hardening substance out of the air and glared murder at her. You want to taste my energy? Help yourself! I forced my energy through it like a siphon, feeding her my Super Saiyan power. She screamed as if it were red hot, reeling and retching, retreating back from my energy. I streaked towards her like a missile and slammed my elbow into her chest, shattering her collarbone. I then grabbed her face with my hand, slamming it into the ground, and then an intense ki blast fired straight into her skull. Reject! I roared. Her head was knocked back, and she crashed to the ground, unmoving. Nix! Zakal crowed. Get him! Get him, all of you! Zakal's clones moved to attack at once. I snarled and roared in their direction like a lion. The clones froze in fear. Cowards in body and spirit. I took a step towards them, and two literally turned to flee from me. I shot after them and slew them with a mere kick to their sides. With screams of pain, they were knocked to the ground. The others fell one by one as I struck each in vital locations. Head, neck, chest. None were dead. At least not yet. Neither Nix or Zakal were who I wanted. It was the monster who hurt Victoria. Vokan! I shouted. The thunderous sound of my voice caused my own ki to expand, and Vokan took a shuddering step back. It's not possible, he stammered. This power, it's a Super Saiyan? That's a legend. A stupid legend. You can't fool me with a mere change in hair color. I won't be deceived with an obvious facade. He ran at me, firing ki blasts as he did. Just as he got within 10 yards, he vanished, prepared to attack me from behind. I could already sense his movements as he warped behind me to attack from my rear. I spun around and blocked his attack, rebounding off the ground and bouncing off the wall and back at him. Our battle became one of rapid strikes and movements. We were flying around the warehouse, moving so fast our after images were all that could be seen. The sound of our blows echoing through the metal structure, causing loud crashes and shocks through the air. But there was a clear fact that only Vokan and I could detect. Vokan was losing. His reflexes weren't on par with mine. His moves were sluggish, his strikes pitiful compared to mine. The only reason he wasn't already beaten was I wanted to watch him struggle. Watch him realize little by little what a grave error he'd made. I wanted him to feel the weight of his sins. And then I'd punish him for them. Each failed strike added to the look of anger on his face, and each successful blow of mine created a wave of fear that felt an impression onto his sadistic face. I knocked aside one of his punches and kicked him hard to the chin, knocking him upwards. Am I still a facade? I snarled, soaring up at him and slamming both of my fists into his head, sending him crashing to the ground. You think this is just a stupid legend? He coughed and struggled to his feet, blood dripping from his head as I landed across from him, rage fueling my fuel. You attacked her. You attacked Victoria. I warned you to leave her alone. I offered you the chance to fight me fair and square, but you crossed the line. You put her in intensive care. She could die because of you. What the hell is she to you? Vokan growled. She's just some human bit. His insulting mouth was silenced by the force of my fist in his chest, compressing the muscles and bones until they shattered like glass. His words were like kindling to an already roaring fire. My face was twisted in a look of mad rage. I would silence him. I'd end his whole wretched existence, and I knew the most effective way to do it. Vokan fell back, clutching his crushed chest and breathing heavily. He climbed to his feet and charged me one more time. And it would be the last time. I clenched my fists tightly and began releasing a steady and intense amount of ki. But rather than fire it, I suppressed it, keeping it tightly bound to my fist. The ki vibrated. It was bouncing wildly around my hand, building kinetic energy. This was the first step in the technique. Ki energy constantly moving, so that what happens when you tighten it and compress it into one fixed spot around the fist, vibrating at rapid speeds. I forced more ki around my fist until a pure white sphere could be seen forming around it. The sphere was pure concentrated ki, and it was reverberating at dangerous levels. My whole arm was trembling, trying to contain it. The magnitude of my own power was growing out of control, but I didn't care. His face, his disgusting voice, his malicious and monstrous nature, it would all vanish in one blow. Victoria's everything to me, I hissed at him. The key was reaching its breaking point. I couldn't contain it anymore. You'll never hurt her again. Or anyone ever again. I am Vokon. I kill who I please. Now die, you miserable Saiyan brat! He screamed. I was in a rage. I pulled back the fist, holding the powerful, reverberating, shaking, quaking key. Sorry, Master. Shishin! The town outside of Bay, where the warehouse was located, trembled as an earthquake of intense power shook the air, the earth, and the heavens itself. Buildings collapsed and were thrown off of their foundation. Cars were shaken and knocked over. The air itself trembled and power went off intermittently for miles. The warehouse itself exploded, crumbling to pieces like falling stones, and the air seemed to shatter and shake. It was as if someone had detonated a bomb or launched a handheld earthquake within the air. There was a sound of a high-pitched scream for the briefest of moments, and the roar of what sounded like a thunderbolt. Around the warehouse, the ground was split into small fissures, and the structure itself was no more. Trees fell to the ground, uprooted and decimated, and then all was quiet once more. The terror gone and the catastrophe over. The 10-second earthquake had come to an end, and deep within the wreckage of an old abandoned warehouse, a young Saiyan, the only survivor, roared in pain and remorse. And that was chapter 31. Let me know what you guys think. All right. So, essentially, for some of you who are wondering what the Jishin is all about, I actually can't take full credit for it. I was actually very much inspired by the character Whitebeard in One Piece, one of the abilities he had. I'll share it with you. Give me just a second. See if I can't show you guys. So, yeah, there we go. So, it's a little GIF image. Whitebeard was a character in One Piece who had this really cool power where he could create earthquakes with his body and with his punches. And he could build up the power of his quake in his fist, and then he could punch and release just a massive earthquake-style attack from his hand. And I thought that kind of power is just so OP. Like, to me, that is just such an overwhelming power. And I thought, what if I could give that to Tomoki? So I thought that would be a really cool idea. Just create this massive earthquake just with the power of his own punch. Let me see.
Like, I just always thought that the power of a literal earthquake in the palm of your hand, just OP, man. Just, you can't top that. But anyway, so we'll leave it at that. But that is the power of the Jishin. Alright, that leaves us with 2 more stories tonight. That is Monster Club and Reanimated. So let's get a picture of Monster Club up there. 2 more chapters of that. Let's see. Let's put Christina up there, I think. I think I'll put Christina up there. If I have her picture. Oh, there she is. We'll put her up there now. Alright. Let's get to work. Monster Club, Chapter 43. Published September 5th, 2016. How many chapters of Monster Club do I have left? Let me see. There's a total of 56. So we're on 43 now. So that means 13. We got 13 more chapters. All right, let's do it. Exhausted and sweaty, Abraham sat down on the hillside overlooking the plantation. Since the moment breakfast had ended, it had been one chore after another. It was incredible the amount of work that was put into every moment on the farm. He'd had to help plant seeds, pull weeds, feed the animals. Poor Tamil felt excluded too, and being unfamiliar with the garden, he wasn't sure how to manage it. And he helped inside by cleaning up the interior of the house, and Abraham hadn't seen her since eating. Now the sun was high in the sky, and the air felt humid, like rain was on the way. "You all right?" Abraham looked to see the tall and muscly built Alex walking towards him, his horns prominent upon his head and a grin on his face. "You look like a deer caught in headlights, staring off into space like that." "Just deep in thought," Abraham answered. "Nothing wrong about that? Care to share?" he asked. Abraham shook his head. "It's boring." "Ain't nothing boring about a friend's concerns," Alex answered. He reached out into the grass and pulled out a long reed, sticking in his teeth and leaning back so he was lying on the grass. He wrapped his arms behind his head and smiled up at the sky. "But if you're not wanting to talk, maybe you can hear a thought in my noggin?" "I'm listening," Abraham shrugged. "Kick back, kid. Take a load off." He patted the grass next to him, and Abraham obliged by laying down too, staring up at the deep blue sky, waiting for Alex to speak. "Now look there, ain't that just purty?" "The sky?" "Yeah," he laughed. "That's why I love living out here. Ain't no loud cars and distractions, no buildings and stuff to get in the way of life." "Yeah, I guess," Abraham replied. "Yeah, I was like you once," Alex muttered at last. "You were human?" Abraham asked. Alex burst out laughing and shook his head. "No, you dumbass. I wasn't talking about species. I mean, I was lost like you are." "I'm lost?" Abraham asked, giving a snort of amusement. "I saw it at breakfast earlier, and it's clear in the way you work. You ain't got a real home yet, or at least you don't think you do." "And how would you know that? All us non-human folk, what you call monsters, we're all the same, you know," he sighed. "Where do we belong if it ain't with y'all peeper? I remember went out mooring a calf and asking my mom why we live on a farm, why we ain't going out and meeting other people. You know what she done told me?" "What?" Abraham asked, curious. "She said, 'Alexander, we live on this farm because it's our home and there ain't no place like it.' So I says to her, 'But Mom, how do you know it's home?' And she says back, 'Yes.' She says, 'Because home is where you know you belong. It's where you can't imagine being anywhere else,'" he said with a big smile. And she was right. Abraham didn't smile back. He just kept his eye on the sky and his thoughts to himself. "So tell me, Abraham, where's your home? Where can't you imagine being without?" "I'm an orphan. I've had a lot of homes, Alex, and my last home was destroyed by a crazy asshole. So now I'm a homeless guy again." "Well, are you?" Alex asked. "Your home was really destroyed? Gone forever?" "Of course it was. I told you all about it this morning." And think real hard. Think about home for you. What's it look like?" Abraham closed his eyes and forced his mind hard on home. The clubhouse. What it had looked like before. The beautiful cabin in the interior. And each time he did, he kept seeing Asher sitting in the corner like a watchful shadow, or Michelle in her room reading. He pictured the garden where Tamil was planting flowers, or the lake where Calypso would string beads together out of shells. He'd see Sarah up in her web-filled room making clothes out of her silk, or Katie coil up in her bed trying on different shirts. He saw Solomon sitting in that familiar armchair and that smile that haunted his memories like the ghost he was. He saw all of them so clearly. Them, but not the house. "So did you see the house?" Alex asked. "At first, but then I saw everyone else." "That's 'cause a home is where you belong, but it ain't necessarily a building," Alex pointed out. He rolled his shoulders slowly and motioned with his head back towards the farm. "That building? It ain't my home. After my mom and pa died, after the damn Dawnbringers ransacked the place, I wanted to leave, Wanted to escape the bad memories, but there were still others. Other non-human folk who needed a home like Christina and David. They were my home. I stay with them 'cause they're where I belong. But I can't go to the club now," Abraham argued. "They sent me away because they were worried I'd be hurt in the fight that was coming." "Well, fight's gotta be over now, right?" Alex asked. "Listen, Abraham, you ain't never gonna find who you are and what you want until you're with your family, and when you're with them, you're home." Abraham nodded his head, now starting to realize why he'd sat down to talk. What he was telling him to do. This wasn't where Abraham was needed. It was just another form of running away from his foster home. "I'm not going to run away. The home I loved was waiting for me." "Alex, can I ask you to do me a favor? What you need? Tomorrow, can David and Tori give Tamil, Annie, and myself a ride back to the club? I want to go home." I'm pretty sure we can arrange that." "You made a wise choice, Abraham. I don't think it was wise to run away like you did, but I don't blame you for it. I'm thinking your family be proud of you for going back." The night was falling now. Abraham's hands were scabbed and bleeding a little from the hard work, and his muscles couldn't be any more sore than they already were now. He leaned against the side of the bar, groaning and rubbing his tired arm. Tamil was nearby and was washing his face with the spigot beside the building. "It's very tiring work," he muttered. "No kidding. But didn't you just work the whole time in the garden? No use to carrots and, potatoes?" "Yeah, you said it right," Abraham assured him. "I need to sleep," he said, walking alongside the bar and keeping one hand on the wall to direct him. Abraham watched him walk away as he placed his hands under the water spigot as well. He winced in pain as the water hit the scabs and stung him. "Ouch! Crap, that hurts. How does Alex handle this every day?" As he spoke, he suddenly felt something cold and sharp on the back of his neck and groaned, thinking it was more sweat trickling down it. He moved to brush it off when suddenly something grabbed his tired wrist. "Don't say a word if you want to live." Abraham froze in place and his voice caught in his throat. He knew that voice. A voice that he'd prayed he'd never hear again. The boy shuddered but didn't say a word or scream as he wanted to. The last time he'd heard his voice was right before the clubhouse had vanished into a fireball. Abraham was forced to back behind the farmhouse and was shoved against a wall, seeing that the cold and sharp object was actually a very long knife in the hands of a man he hated. "Morgan!" Abraham hissed. Morgan's face was contorted in a scowl, and his shaggy beard masked his sneer slightly, but one could still detect his contempt. "It's been a while, correct, Abraham?" he asked. Abraham growled, trying to hide his shaking voice. "How do you know my name?" "I did a fair bit of research after I fled your little clubhouse," he replied. "I'd stuck around a while to observe your group, but without my spiritual barrier, finding your vampire was an impossible task. I simply performed reconnaissance." "Screw you!" Abraham snapped angrily. "You killed Solomon! You took away our home!" "Solomon Adams has been dead for years. I merely put him to rest," Morgan retorted. "A ghost remains when they have unfinished business to attend in the mortal world." Little did he know that his solution was so close at hand. "What the hell are you talking about? Let me go!" He slammed his hand over Abraham's mouth and put a knife to his throat. "It seems you don't realize it either. Perhaps it's a good thing. Tell me where your friends are hiding and I'll let you go." "Okay, there's somewhere between go and fuck yourself!" Abraham felt the harsh slap of a hand across his cheek, as Morgan didn't seem to appreciate the attitude. "Then how about in exchange for a little information?" Morgan asked. "I happen to know that your friends were already attacked by the Dawnbringers, and one of them is dead." Abraham's heart stopped cold in his chest and his hands went clammy. "Who?" Abraham demanded. "Don't know. Like I said,
I don't know where they are. I only know what I've picked up from Dawnbringer chatter, and they've talked quite a bit about Solomon and the house I blew up. Who died? Who else died in my family? Family, huh? That's an interesting way of referring to monsters. Abraham swung a wild kick at Morgan, who knocked it aside with his own foot. What's it matter? Solomon was the only target I cared about, but I'm perfectly fine with the others dying as well. Damn it, what's so important about Solomon? He was just a nice old man, Abraham begged. Why do you have to go and destroy his home? Solomon Adams, former Army Air Corps officer during World War II, married to Amelia Adams 20 years before his death. After he'd returned from the war, Solomon Adams was responsible for the first official monster shelter, Morgan snarled back. The Dawnbringers assumed he'd been dead for the last few decades, only to recently find out he was actually still roaming the world. The news weighed heavy on Abraham as he felt the realization creep in. Solomon had been helping monsters long ago, even before his death, and even into the next life he was still giving back. Abraham felt himself shaking angrily. Such kindness had to be snuffed out. Why? Well, congratulations, Abraham snarled. He's dead. Mission accomplished. Now leave us alone! Not until I find out your endgame. I thought it strange that a human would be living with a bunch of monsters. Why interact with them? Why help them? Why save them from me? So I had to do a little digging, and what I found out was very disturbing, Abraham Singer. Abraham's snarl turned to a frown of concern. If Morgan knew his last name, then he'd done his homework. But what had he found out? Even Abraham was curious. So, what's your deal? Trying to carry on the legacy? What legacy? Abraham demanded. Your father, Robert Singer. He and your mother, Jessica Singer, died in a car crash, 75th Street, while you were in school. They were on their way to pick you up, as I recall. Both were confirmed dead at the scene. How do you know about that? Because the Dawnbringers had the file on your father, too. He changed his last name out of fear that the Dawnbringers would hunt him down like a dog. And it worked, too, for at least a few years until we tracked him down. My guess is he was going to carry on your grandfather's precious work, and we couldn't allow it. We thought with him dead, that would be the end of it, but then you showed up with that monster club. So, and now it seems we have to stamp out the last of his wretched family. So I'm asking you, is that your goal? Are you trying to pick up the work of your grandfather? What work? Abraham finally screamed. Put it together, you little shit. Your father's real name was Robert Adams, son of Solomon and Rebecca Adams. You're the grandson of that bastard ghost who started this bloody mess in the first place.
And that was chapter 43. Give me a second. Hey, what's up, Cold Rose? How you doing? Yeah, I don't do it professionally. I do it for fun. Yep, so for those who weren't following, Solomon's Abraham's granddaddy. Didn't know that, did you? Yeah. I'll admit, I wanted that to be the big twist, but I'll admit, like I said, I was a very young writer at the time. It's kind of cliche, but I thought it was cool. Do what you will with it. All right, I need to get me on a show, dude. Give this man a better mic. I can't afford it. I am so broke. All right, so let's go ahead on to chapter 44, and then we can start the new story tonight, Reanimated Chapter 1. I think you guys will like Reanimated, so let's move on to the next chapter of Monster Club, and then we'll start Reanimated. I'm super excited. So here we... Oh, hold on. What's this? Okay, never mind. Fixed it. Okay, we're good. We're good. All right, let's do it. Monster Club Chapter 44, here we go. Abraham stood stock still, staring at Morgan like he was spouting off scripture. What? You're Solomon's grandson. You had to have known that. What the hell are you talking about? I can't be his grandson, Abraham shouted, struggling. There's no way. So you had no idea that you were related to Solomon Adams, Morgan asked, honest surprise on his face. It was pure luck you stumbled upon his house.
Dad never told me about my grandparents. I don't think I've ever met them. Of course you wouldn't have. Your father, Robert, changed his name to Robert Singer to hide his family from the Dawnbringers. He intended to build up an establishment for monsters and other supernatural creatures to reside, some kind of sanctuary. But we caught on to him before they could happen. I guess he didn't stamp out the whole ordeal the way we should have. You're lying! Why should I lie? Morgan hissed. Do you think I'd waste my time with you if you weren't related to that detestable family? You're nothing. A human brat who got in over his head with an underground war you know next to nothing about. The only reason you're out of such high priority is your family, the Adams. Abraham didn't know what to say. Tears began climbing into his eyes and to make his throat tremble angrily. He could barely speak if he even had the will. He couldn't believe it. And yet, it all felt right. He had felt so at home with the club. Had that been because he truly belonged among them? Or because Solomon was in fact his real family? Could Solomon have somehow known about it all along? Why hadn't he said anything? And why hadn't his father mentioned any of this to him? Abraham reached up to Morgan's hand, clutching his throat, and felt the bitter tears roll down his cheeks. If Solomon really was his grandfather, then this man had taken him from this world. Tears, Morgan asked. Remorse for your family. Shut up! Abraham snapped. You asshole! You took everything from me! I shouldn't be here. I need to get back to my family. You're delusional. You have no family anymore. You're the one who's delusional. The Monster Club is my family. Abraham swung another kick, and this time it connected, pushing Morgan back some. Once his grip weakened, Abraham sprinted away from him and grabbed the barn. Christina! Alex! Anyone! Abraham was knocked to the ground by Morgan, who had recovered and leapt on top of him, drawing a knife from his hip. You little brat! Get ready to... Ah! Abraham looked up just in time to see Morgan falling on his back, wrestling with a large purplish mass that had flung itself at him. The mass was fluid and practically flowing like water. Get this thing off me! Morgan roared. What is it? Jelly! Abraham cried. Sure enough, Abraham could see the face of Jelly amongst the gooey mass as she wrestled Morgan to the ground. Morgan swung punches and kicks at her, but her fluid body simply absorbed the blows, and his arms and legs just slipped right through her. She was entirely unfazed, but as for Morgan, he was struggling to breathe. Jelly, stay there! I'm going to get help! You did this? You called this thing to attack? Nah, that's just how Jelly says hello. Abraham spun around to see Alex marching past him towards the struggling Morgan. Jelly, don't you dare get off him. Bad man not gonna move, Jelly squealed, her body enveloping him forcefully. Morgan could barely struggle against Jelly's body. Abraham, get inside. Tell Christina what's going on. We can't let him tell anyone we're here. What are you gonna do? Abraham asked, breathing heavily. Sudden memories replayed in Abraham's head of Asher when he'd bitten into and killed that Dawnbringer agent so long ago. What we have to in order to survive, Alex replied. It's best you not see it, he answered. Abraham looked from the struggling Morgan to Alex. He thought about how savage Asher had been, the killing intent in his eyes, the ferocity and the hatred. Alex, would he have the same look in his eyes? What about Christina? Would she? Was this how it was going to be for them all the time? Abraham, sorry, I hate his guts too, but does he really have to die? If you kill him, it just proves their point that we can't coexist with humans. Alex glanced back at Abraham, a hint of solemn remorse in his eyes. Abraham, I understand how you feel, but this ain't about proving a point. It's about our own survival. We ain't got the resources and capability to fight off an attack if he tells someone. But if we kill him, Abraham stopped talking. They stared at each other. And then he heard Christina. She walked behind him and put a hand on his shoulder, squeezing it gently and encouragingly. Abraham, we don't disagree. It'd be wonderful if humans and monsters could live together, but as long as people like this man exist, that will never happen. We can't put our family in danger out of a blind hope that he'll stay silent. Abraham tried to argue, but again fell silent before he could bring out the right words. I just thought, Abraham, you being here is proof that it's not impossible. This isn't your fault. You freaks! Morgan screamed, trying to pull himself out of Jelly's clutches. Go ahead and kill me! Get it over with, you monsters! Christina sneered and grabbed her sunglasses. Jelly, get off him. I'll take care of this. Take Abraham inside and get him cleaned up. We need to get him ready to leave. Jelly did as ordered and slithered off of Morgan, running over to Abraham and taking his hand in her slimy fingers. Morgan made a move to get up, but Christina ripped off her shades, and though Abraham couldn't see what her eyes looked like, from behind her, Morgan's whole body went limp like a rag doll. Shouldn't look, Jelly warned. Christina's eyes super scary. Okay.
Abraham muttered, following her inside. He tried not to think about what was going on. When he walked in, he saw Penn sitting on a flower pot's edge, glancing out the window with a bitter look on his face. He was watching it happen. He could see it. "Penn, it's best you don't watch," Penn replied. "Why? Why does it have to be that way?" Penn didn't answer at first, but just rubbed his hair. "Abraham, at the end of the day, you need to remember that there's a reason that humans hate us, and there's a reason we hide," Penn finally answered. "Despite what you might wish to believe, humans will always fear that which they do not recognize or understand, or those that are far different from them, particularly in manners that are of a dangerous variety. Some of us, like Christina, are terrifically dangerous. While someone like myself, or Alex, might eventually fit in with society, Jelly, Christina, and David would find it incredibly difficult. It is this reality that separates us. This cold truth is not enough to merely blame human bigotry. They have reason to fear us, and it is truly a miracle that you do not." Penn's words felt like a weight upon Abraham's shoulders, pressing him down and making him feel exhausted and also rather uncertain. It was true. He remembered how he'd first felt the few days he'd spent with the club, that feeling of fear and uncertainty. They were monsters to him then, inhuman and terrifying. But over time, he looked past what they were. He learned to accept them. Even so, could he ignore what they were? Yes, who they were was important, but Penn's point stood firm. What they are cannot be forgotten. If Michelle were to transform into her wolf form near a populated city, if Asher were to be deprived of blood for a few days too long, and then there was, of course, Sarah and Katie, how would society treat them? A freak show? A circus? A lab? Penn looked up, taking notice of the concern on Abraham's face. "Are you all right?" No, I'm not. I got so caught up in seeing the club as my family that I didn't think about them as monsters." "Well, it's not a bad thing," Tamil cried. Abraham, Penn, and Jelly spun around to see Tamil leaning against the wall, feeling his way towards them, with Annie holding his hand as they walked. "Tamil? Annie? It's not bad that see us for more than monsters," Tamil snapped. "Do not speak like we are beasts." "But Penn's right. I can't just disregard that." "Not disregard!" Tamil roared, causing Abraham and even Annie to gasp. Tamil had never looked so angry before. "Am not a monster, Abraham. What is monster? Monster evil. Monster is creature that want hurt. I do not want hurt. I only want help. That's what monster is." "Tamil, I didn't mean to upset you." "Tamil?" Annie asked, tugging his hand encouragingly. Tamil shook his head and then raised it again, his blind eyes unfocused. "So what if not human? So what if some dangerous? Humans dangerous too? Yes, Michelle dangerous, and yes, Asher dangerous too, but humans dangerous. Humans were what blew up Clubhouse. Humans that sent us here. Humans so much better than us? Why? Maybe not only monsters, yes?" Abraham walked towards Tamil and took his shoulder in a tight grip and wrapped his arm around his decaying friend. Tamil clung tightly to Abraham in a firm embrace. "You're right, man. You're absolutely right. I just have a lot on my mind. I didn't mean to get you upset, okay? I'm concerned about what we're going to do next." "Because Morgan say Solomon was grandfather." Abraham's eyes went wide in surprise. "How did you hear that? Am blind, not deaf. Can hear well. Sent Alex and Jelly find you when I hear. So that's how they knew what was happening." "Thanks, man," Abraham added. "And don't worry. We're headed home in the morning. Club will be safe when we return. We go and we be with family again." Tamil sighed in relief. Annie giggled and smiled excitedly. "Everything's going to be okay," she squealed. "Well, I hope so," Penn nodded. "I truly do. Now, Jelly, if you wouldn't mind getting them cleaned off, then they can get started packing." "Jelly clean up," she smiled and ran to Tamil. "How did she plan to Yikes!" Jelly suddenly hugged Tamil tightly, causing Tamil to scream in surprise and discomfort. To their surprise, though, the dirt and sand from Tamil's bandages and body were coming off and swirling around Jelly. Her fluid form acted like a cleaning agent, removing the scum and dirt from their body. Jelly is better than a hot shower for getting you cleaned up, though it's not nearly as relaxing," Penn laughed. "It comes in handy when the plumbing is backed up or when the water heater won't work." "I think I'll just take a bath," Abraham argued. "We don't have the time. You need to leave by midnight." "What? But I thought you wanted us to leave in the morning. Why so early?" "There's no telling if that Morgan's fellow contacted anyone else before approaching you. It's important that you're up and gone by the time his friends arrive," Ben explained. "Midnight means cover under darkness. You'll need to take Jelly with you as well. She has the forest pathways memorized and can travel them in dark fine. David can't. Besides, the big baby's afraid of the dark." The look on Penn's face told Abraham that, were David around to hear that remark, he might have been rather loud and defensive about it. Now enough of that. Jelly, hurry up. Yeah, Jelly knows, Jelly giggled, hugging Abraham next. Abraham cringed as his whole body felt as if it had just been immersed in slime, but at the same time, it felt strangely refreshing. The coolness of her body felt like it was sliding along his and pulling away the fatigue and the roughness. As he glanced down, he could see the filth and dirt, even sweat, rolling off his skin and into her body mass. Jelly never lost her entertained grin either. This was all just second nature to her. Man, that feels weird. It hurt? Jelly asked. Jelly doesn't mean to hurt. No, it doesn't hurt, just it's strange. Strange? Jelly asked. He means that it's new for him, Jelly, Jelly explained. Oh, you never been clean before? Jelly laughed. Well, now you get all clean. She was like a child the way she spoke, and yet the way she'd wrestled Morgan. This was a dangerous blob. Jelly seemed to represent that thin line between what a monster and what was a friend. How thin that line could get, though, and how close could Abraham's family come to crossing it. And that ends chapter 44. All right, now we will get started with Reanimated. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Let me pull up the image for it. I'll warn you, this is an old image. Oh, crap. That's my icon version. I need the regular version. There we go. This one should be it. That's a little better. All right. All right. This story was written back in 2013. That's right, 2013. It is not finished. And odds are good, this story will never be finished, for many reasons. I'll tell you the story. So, before I knew Hannah, before I knew Jay, before I knew Aaron, I had a friend on DeviantArt named Mika. Mika was an artist friend, and I was a writer. We collabed on a lot of ideas, Monster Club being one of them, actually. And we had a really good relationship. But this was one of the stories she and I wanted to work on. I had said at one point that I didn't like zombie stories because they all felt cliche. You could pretty much put together all of the cliches and tropes of a zombie story very easily without much effort. You want to make a zombie story? It's easy. Just insert these 10 tropes and these 10 cliches. You got a dumb zombie story. So someone challenged me, why don't you write your own zombie story? Mika thought it was a good idea. She wanted to create 2 characters with me. And so we created them for a zombie story that we called Reanimated. I think I reached chapter 15 with the story. And then Mika and I broke contact, and our friendship ended. Many of the stories that I worked on with Mika that we didn't finish, I never went back to because she was such a large part of the project, I couldn't bring myself to finish them. In fact, I think the only story that I finished that we started together that she left midway through was Monster Club. I finished Monster Club because Hannah helped me finish it. No, Monster Club isn't the only story I finished. It's the only story I finished that Mika and I started together. That's the only one I finished that we started together was Monster Club. But I've finished other stories. The Tale of Tomoki is technically finished, for example. My story Submerged is finished, for example. Nomad is finished. I've finished stories. But this is the only one. But this is one that I didn't finish and will never finish, probably. Unless someone comes along and wants to help me finish it. In which case, I probably have to start it from the ground up. But anyway. So, Reanimated. Now you know the background. Maybe Hannah can help with the rest of the stories. I'm not going to ask Hannah to do that. She's got her own stuff to worry about. If she's at all interested in any of the stories, she's more than welcome to help me out. But right now, we've got our own stories that we're working on together. So we'll see. All right. Reanimated Chapter 1. Stuffy nose. All right. The sunlight shone through Max's window above her bed. It lay itself across her face, warming her tired body and causing her to stir in her sheets. She'd been so exhausted. School had only just started back for her, and already the strain was too much. She had come home last night at 9 o'clock, eaten supper, and crashed almost immediately. The moment her head hit the pillow, she was out cold. She didn't want to get up. She didn't want to stand. It was Friday, but she couldn't stand the thought of getting up to go back to school. Stupid morning. Max growled as she tried to roll over and block its gaze. Just wait a few more hours. Oh, hold on, time out. Hannah, I have asked before. I have asked before, Hannah, but there were some that you said you had no interest in, remember? So, just leaving it there, moving on. However, the sun did not leave, and she could only groan and roll out of bed onto the floor. She stretched tiredly and walked to her closet to find some clothes. Mom, I'm up, Max called. There was no reply. Mom? Max turned to her clock, and all the tiredness she felt leapt from her body in an instant. The clock read 11 o'clock in the morning. Not only had she slept in and missed school, but it was almost time for Mom's lunch break. I'm such a moron, Max sighed. Better go and visit her at the hospital at least. I owe her that much for missing school. Max's mom was an attendant at the nearby hospital just up the road. Max loved her mother, and she loved Max, but sometimes they would squabble like children. Surely her mom would come down on her for missing school again, but there was nothing to fix that now. They had no car and no means of transportation, which is why Max rides the bus to school every morning. All she could do was go to her mom and face the music. Max was, after all, an honest daughter. Max slipped on a pair of black tights over her legs, then a pair of blue-cut jean shorts. On her feet, she slipped a pair of brown ankle-high boots. Finally, she found her favorite red hoodie, which had always been a little big on her, and slipped it on. She pulled the hood up over her head to keep the sun from bearing down on her too much, and hurried to the stairs. She scurried down to the front door and looked back for a moment as a cold chill ran up her spine. Something didn't feel right to Max. Sure, the house was empty, but there was an odd sensation that she was getting, as if something was out of place or out of order. It was one of those nagging feelings that she just couldn't shake, like something really bad was about to happen. Perhaps it was just the guilt that she had missed school. Maybe, but she couldn't be sure. She tried to shrug it off and walked out the door. The sight before her was horrifying. Indeed, something was very wrong. The street before her was a mess. Cars were wrecked along the driveways and sidewalks, broken appliances and destroyed rubble all around. The streets and blocks were totally devoid of life. There was no person to be seen at all. The world looked destroyed. What happened? Max gasped. She dared to take a trembling step down from her door and walk down the street. She treaded carefully where she stepped, scared that the pavement might fall out from under her. The street looked like it had been in an explosion, but there was no people or injured around to see. Maybe they'd all been taken to the hospital? Mom! Max took off down the street like a bullet. She jumped rubble and wrecked cars trying to make her way to the hospital. To her dismay, the buildings were not far away, and from what she could see, it looked in bad shape. Cars were blocked to the entrances of the hospital because all the wrecks and crowded parking. Max climbed over a few cars and stumbled to the front door. She grabbed the handle and pulled the door open, only to see that all the lights in the building were off. Had there been a blackout? She walked cautiously inside and walked to the front desk. Normally, the hospital was a nice and bustling place. Patients and doctors littered the hallways and rooms, moving from place to place. Phones rang and people chattered while some coughed and sneezed in the corner. Usually, Max's mom was working behind the counter, and they would always smile when she walked in. However, this time was different. The front hall was bare and empty. The floor and walls were coated in an odd, oozing liquid, and the light from outside cast eerie shadows all around her. Hello? She looked around, seeing no one, and decided to take a look over the edge of the desk. Oh, God! She screamed. Laying on the floor behind the desk, soaked in blood and torn up guts, were two nurses and a hospital custodian. They lay dead, with vacant expressions, unmoving and eerily silent as flies buzzed around their bodies. Max resisted the urge to vomit and stepped away from the scene. Something terrible had happened in this hospital. Oh, Mom, please be okay. Max wandered deeper into the hospital, avoiding fallen carts, a few busted down doors, and one or two bodies laying around. Max stepped as far away as she could from the bodies, trying not to look or think about them. They were all torn apart, ripped to pieces, and she didn't even want to imagine how that could have been done. The more she thought about it, the more she worried for her mom. Searching down and up the hallways, she just began to realize that the entire building had been demolished by something or someone. But what could have caused this? Suddenly, Max came to a large pair of double doors, which you recognized as the doors to the infirmary. It looked unlocked, but undisturbed for the most part. Max crept close and silently eased the door open. "Mom?" she called quietly, praying that she would get an answer. There was a sound of a soft thud as something moved. Max let out a small yelp, trying to peer through the darkness to see what was that moved. She could step further into the dark and silent room as the small amount of light seeped in, casting terrifying shadows along the wall. Just then, Max let out a squeal as she saw something stand up. "Who's there?" The object turned around to face Max. Max noticed that he looked like one of the hospital attendants. "Oh, thank goodness. Someone else here besides me. What's been going on here?" The figure made no sound, but only slowly began to shuffle around the desk towards Max. "Are you all right?" Again, the attendant did not reply, but now Max noticed something was very wrong with the attendant. Close to the neck and along down the teeth and along down the shoulder, there was nothing. The flesh had been torn away by what looked to be teeth marks. Blood was stained down the side of the uniform, and his eyes were cold. There was no life in them. They were pale and sickly, and his mouth hung open, showing the saliva on his jaws. "Stay away!" Max cried, backing away quickly. The attendant kept coming, his arms outstretched to grab for Max. Max spun around and grabbed a pole near her and took a swing at the attendant, hoping he'd back away to avoid being hit. Crack! The attendant didn't even slow down as a pipe smashed into his chest. The sound of a broken ribcage told Max that she'd caused severe damage, but the attendant hardly seemed fazed. He just kept rushing towards her, his feet shuffling along the floor. "Help!" Max shrieked, falling backwards against the wall. She knew no one would hear her, and no one would come to her rescue. The beast was going to kill her, eat her, and leave her for dead. Just like all the others in the hallway. The attendant, if that's what he was anymore, made a furious growl and lunged at her, jaws wide open. Max watched in horror, unable to back up anymore. The beast let out a loud growl and came upon her. "Duck!" Max heard the voice, but didn't quite process the order. She looked to see something flash across the air, and suddenly the attendant let out a groan as something was suddenly piercing through its forehead. Max saw it was a sword of some sort. A blade. Holding the blade behind the attendant was a boy about her age. He was wearing a leather hoodie jacket and a shirt underneath it. He was wearing jeans and boots, and in his hand was what looked like a long samurai sword. His eyes were like nothing she'd seen before. They were green, but there was a feral feel behind them. A wild and vicious aura to his gaze, like a dog that needed taming. Yet at the same time, they looked lost. The boy yanked the blade out of the attendant, and then the man sank to the floor unmoving. Max could only watch in amazement, and then gaze back up at the boy who was cleaning his sword with a rag. "You're lucky that I got here so fast, huh?" the boy said darkly. "What was your strategy anyway? To hope he didn't like the taste of you or the smell?" "What are you talking about? Who are you?" "Listen," he snapped, tying his sword around his back. "I'd love to chat, but we need to leave. Right now." "But—" The boy turned and grabbed her wrist and yanked her to her feet. "Let's go before more show up," he growled. "More what?" Max squealed. "More like him," the boy replied, pointing at the body. "If we run into a mob of those things, we're both done for." "What's wrong with him?" Max begged. "What's happening?" The boy stopped and looked at Max in stunned amazement. "Where have you been the last 12 hours?" he demanded. "Girl, the city's in the middle of a Class 3 zombie outbreak." All right. That was chapter 1. All right. Chapter 2. Max just stared at the boy for a long time, not sure of what to respond with or what to say. It had to be a joke, a sick and twisted joke to fool her. Yet he looked dead serious. His face was etched with anxiety and nervousness. There was urgency behind his tone that told her that he wasn't about to shout. "Fooled ya." "What did you say?" "The city is caught up in a zombie outbreak," the boy repeated. Max shook her head and backed away. "That's lunacy. You're insane." The boy groaned and hurried to the door. He grabbed the handle and slammed it shut, locking it behind him. He looked out the door window as if looking to see that the coast was clear, before turning back to Max. "Insane or not, it's the truth." He pulled out a rolling chair and sat down. "But I can see that you won't come with me until you get some answers. So let's get all that out of the way, shall we?" He spoke kindly, but there was a frustration and fear in his words. He wanted to move. He wanted to get out of the room, perhaps out of the hospital itself. But he was right. Max wanted answers. "Who are you?" she demanded. "Name's Gabriel. No last name. You are?" "Maxine, but everyone calls me Max," she answered. Gabriel nodded and leaned forward. "All right. You want to ask questions? This is your chance. Make them quick," Gabriel ordered. Max sighed, collecting her thoughts, figuring out just the right things to say. "All right. You said this was a zombie outbreak. What do you mean by that?" Gabriel rolled his eyes. "I mean the dead are getting up and walking around and eating people," Gabriel answered. "Don't you watch monster movies?" Max shook her head angrily. "But zombies aren't real," Max insisted. Gabriel reached into his jacket and pulled out a small book with writing on it. He flipped it open and looked it through. "Well, I thought so too. Until recently. I swiped this little book from a desk in one of these offices. It was enlightening." "What is that?" "Laboratory journal of some kind. The doctor who wrote it and it talks in great detail about the zombie infestation. He called it classified information." Max paused for a moment. "Do you remember that a few days ago her mom had mentioned some classified material being taken to the hospital recently? She didn't mention the details on it, but that she just seemed rather unnerved." "What does it say?" Gabriel looked in the book and then back at Max. "The virus that causes zombification has existed for thousands of years. Records that go back as far as the days of the Roman Empire. However, the virus is rare and difficult to contract in its purest form. It usually strikes in small towns in third world countries, which lack medical and military resources to prevent outbreaks. For this reason, the UN has kept the outbreaks that do occur covered up and contained. When an outbreak does occur, it is given a classification and then contained." As he spoke, Max had only listened in awe. Could it be true? Could zombies really exist? If so, how did it gotten so out of hand here? "Wait, you said this was a class 3. What does that mean?" Gabriel sighed and flipped a few pages. "Zombie outbreaks are classified in 5 ways," he answered. "Class 1 and 2 outbreaks are small, and usually only pertain to third world countries and towns, where it can be easily covered up and neutralized. A third class outbreak refers to an outbreak within a large city or community, which would require a large military resistance and containment plan. You don't want to know what a class 4 and 5 would mean." Max leaned back against the wall, trying to take in all this information. "It can't be real," she whispered. Gabriel paused and closed the book. The book explains how the zombie virus infects and spread, but it's complicated and written in scientific variables and equations that I don't understand. "But how did it get here? There's no way it would have gotten out of control so fast." Gabriel looked up at Max and nodded. "The journal here says that there is no cure for the zombie virus, which is why samples of it were being sent here so that it could be studied and perhaps a cure could be found. But I guess things didn't go smoothly. Yesterday there was an accident on the road outside the city and a truck carrying an unknown substance wrecked, and a large amount of toxins got into the water, which were then taken to the water supply. The plant that purifies the water was not aware of the chemicals and took no precautions against it. They didn't realize the incident until an hour or two after the fact. So in that time, anyone who drank water in this city within those 2 hours were exposed to the virus." Max gasped. "When was this?" "Yesterday, around midday." Max and Gabriel sat in silence for a long time, neither one saying a word. Max sighed with relief because she had been at school all day and she didn't trust the water fountains at school. She always drank a Gatorade. She wasn't infected. "So then what?" Max asked, urging Gabriel to continue. Gabriel shrugged. "Those who were infected didn't notice anything until that evening when the symptoms started to kick in. They started to succumb to intense fever, vomiting, and eventually their heart stops beating," Gabriel muttered. "And then at about midnight last night, those who were initially infected began to come back. The zombie virus had infected almost a fifth of the entire city in just an hour, and because there was no preparation or warning, the city flew into a panic last night, only allowing for more to become infected and caught up in the mob searching for escape." "Why weren't we warned?" Max demanded. "If the chemicals were spilled, then wouldn't there be an announcement or something?" "Remember how I said the UN didn't want people to know about the existence of a zombie virus? Think about what would happen if that knowledge was suddenly given to the world. Besides, the driver of that chemical truck probably had no idea what he was carrying," Gabriel snapped. The frustration on his face was even more apparent. It was clear he was getting very tired of the questions and wanted nothing more than to flee the hospital. However, Max wasn't done. So, what's being done about it? The military's been informed, and they've set up mobile barricades all around the city limit so that no one infected can get out. Survivors make their way to specified emergency exits that are announced over the radio at specific times. They are giving the survivors in the city 1 week to make their way to the exits before they make their assault on the city. And that's exactly what we need to get going to now, Gabriel answered. He got up from his chair and held out his hand. Let's get going. Max stared at the hand but didn't take it. She simply slumped to the floor, grasping her head in her hands and shaking. It just can't be real. This can't be. Gabriel quietly watched her before kneeling down in front of her. Look, I know this is a lot to handle. I'm still having trouble taking it in myself. But we can't stay here, though. We are in danger and we need to get away. If we stay here, we're both dead, Gabriel said. I'm scared, Max admitted. I don't think this kind of thing was possible, and now there's a chance for us to survive this. If we can find a working radio and listen for the location of the next emergency exit door opening. And when it will be, we can get out of here in one piece. Max looked up at Gabriel, tears filling her eyes, and she attempted to dry them off. How do you know all this? She demanded. Gabriel sighed and put his hands in his pockets. Well, if there's one thing I'm good at, it's gathering information. I live off the streets, stealing every now and then, fighting to survive. Don't really have a home. I know the city better than almost anyone else, and when things happen around here, I learn about them quick. Max glanced at him for a moment. So you're just a street urchin? She asked, a bit of humor in her voice. Yeah, you could say that. But right now I'm a survivor, and so are you. We need to leave this hospital and this city, Gabriel insisted. Max didn't remember why she'd come to the hospital in the first place. Wait, she cried. I need to find my mom first. She works here. Gabriel stared at her in silence and narrowed his eyes. When the outbreak started, several of the infected were brought to the hospital. The outbreak was strongest in this area, Gabriel growled. Max then began to piece together what he was getting at. Max, your mom is likely... Don't say it, Max spat back. I would know if she was dead. I would feel it. She said the words, but she didn't mean them. She felt the doubt flood her mind. The hundreds of dead bodies she'd seen in the halls. The creature that had attacked her. Hope seemed to trickle away with each thought. I need to find her. Max made her way to the door. Gabriel leapt in front of her, blocking her path. Stop, he barked. Listen to me. If your mom is still here, then she's probably either dead or worse. Chances are that if you find her, she'll be more ready to eat you alive than slap. Gabriel's words were cut short as Max's hand struck hard across his cheek. Gabriel touched his red cheek and stared at Max in surprise. Max's face was contorted in fury, and tears were now rolling down her cheeks. Shut up, she screamed. You think I don't know that? I can't. I can't stand the thought of Mom being... Max sank to her knees, her hands trembling. She's all I've got left. We need each other. She's my mom. Don't you understand how much she means to me? Gabriel stared at her and looked away. Not really. Can't say I've had much experience with moms. I never knew mine. Max paused at this, realizing that she must have touched a nerve with him. I'm sorry. Forget about it. It's in the past. Max stood up and dried her eyes. I just have to know if she's alive, Max stated forcefully. Gabriel sighed and looked back at her. It's possible. Your mom's all right. Max spun to face him. It is? Gabriel held up his hand and nodded. I won't make any promises. But I do know that this hospital is located near an emergency exit that was closed up a while ago. It's possible that your mom was caught up in the mob of escaping survivors and got out. So she might have gotten out, she cried. Like I said, I can't make promises, but it's possible. Gabriel said with a small smile. If she was caught up in the mob, it would have been impossible to go find you and let you know. Max rushed to Gabriel and hugged him around the middle. Thank you, she cried happily. Gabriel just stood frozen in place, not sure what to say or do. Yeah, you're welcome. Don't go getting all mushy on me, though, Gabriel stammered. We still need to get out of here, you know. Max nodded and then walked to the door. Yeah, at first I need to search the hospital. What? Why? If she didn't get out and she's still here, I need to know for sure. After I know for sure that she's not here, I'll leave with you, Max explained. Gabriel snarled into his hand and slapped his forehead. You are the most stubborn and pig-headed girl I've ever met, he snapped. Nobody's making you come with me. You can leave if you want. She walked to the door prepared to open it. Wait, Gabriel called. He walked her and tried to regain his composure. Yeah? I'll go with you. You're going to need my help to get through this hospital alive. Max smiled and raised an eyebrow. You don't think I can handle it myself? After seeing the way you dealt with that first zombie? I don't think so. Max laughed and picked up a lead pipe from the ground. We'll see, but I do appreciate the company. I'm probably making a huge mistake, but there's no going back now. Gabriel put his hand on the door and pulled out his sword with his free hand. Max only put her hand on his arm. I have one more question. Why did you come to help me? Gabriel gazed at her for a moment and then thought hard about it. I don't know. I came to this hospital to try and find out everything that I had been going on in the city. And then I saw you in here with that zombie. I guess I just couldn't turn a blind eye to you. Max smiled at him. Very chivalrous. Hey, we gotta go through hell to survive. Better to not do it alone, right? You ready? Yeah. Sit close to me and keep your guard up. They may be slow and stupid, but they can move pretty quietly. If you see anything move, be ready to kill it, Gabriel explained. Max suddenly trembled a little, thinking about how Gabriel had mercilessly cut down the zombie from earlier with almost no effort. Could she really do the same thing? How do I do that? Max asked. How do I kill it? Gabriel shot her a look that made Max fall quiet. His eyes were a mixture of kind and understanding warmth, with a small spark of cold and lethal tenacity. With a single and precise kick, the doors flew open. Aim for the head, Gabriel ordered. And that was Chapter 2. I think next time we'll get to Chapter 3. Alright, guys. Well, thank you all so much. This was a fun stream, as usual. Hope you guys had fun. I know I did. And I hope you guys are enjoying the new stories, Helping Hands and Reanimated. They're older stories, but I enjoyed working on them. Well, anyway, that's going to wrap up tonight's events. And we've only got 15 viewers anyway, so probably for the best that we go ahead and call it. So thank you guys a bunch. Don't know if I'll stream tomorrow. We'll have to see. And as always, I will see you in my next video. Take care.